Most conspiracy theories disappear without proof, but these six left behind court rulings, declassified files, government investigations, and thousands of surviving documents. Some online versions are exaggerated. The events at the center of them were completely real.
The tobacco conspiracy. For decades, smokers suspected that cigarette companies understood the dangers of their products while publicly pretending the science was uncertain. They were right. In 1953, the presidents of several major tobacco companies met to coordinate their response to growing evidence connecting cigarettes to disease. Although they were competitors, none wanted to gain an advantage by admitting its products were dangerous. Publicly, the industry questioned the science. It funded research that appeared independent, promoted supposedly safer light cigarettes, and repeatedly reassured customers that the health risks remained unproven. Internally, the companies studied nicotine, addiction, and serious illness. Court records later showed that they suppressed research, manipulated nicotine delivery, and made statements they knew were misleading. The conspiracy collapsed inside a federal courtroom. After a 9-month trial, the court found that the companies had participated in a decades-long scheme to defraud the public. In 2006, they were found liable under federal racketeering law. The ruling described more than 50 years of deception involving addiction, secondhand smoke, marketing to young people, and the supposed benefits of low-tar cigarettes. This was no longer a suspicion about corporations hiding uncomfortable research. A court had concluded that competing companies worked together to protect cigarette sales through deliberate deception.
COINTELPRO. Imagine claiming that the FBI was secretly infiltrating political organizations, forging letters, spreading rumors, and trying to destroy legal movements from the inside. For years, that accusation sounded paranoid. Then, the files appeared. In 1956, the FBI created the Counterintelligence Program, better known as COINTELPRO. It began with the Communist Party, then expanded to the Ku Klux Klan, the Socialist Workers' Party, New Left organizations, civil rights activists, and the Black Panther Party. The FBI was not simply collecting information. Its operations were designed to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or neutralize targeted groups and individuals. Informants were placed inside organizations. Anonymous messages were used to create suspicion between members. Forged correspondence helped provoke internal conflicts. Information was passed to employers and journalists to damage reputations. Some targets had committed no crime. Their political activity was enough to attract attention. The program remained secret until March 1971, when a small group broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. They removed confidential documents and mailed copies to newspapers. One unfamiliar word appeared repeatedly in the files: COINTELPRO. The FBI ended the program later that year. The Senate's Church Committee later confirmed a wider history of intelligence abuse and described COINTELPRO as covert action against perceived threats to the existing social order. The government had not merely watched political movements, it had secretly attempted to manipulate their futures.
Operation Sea Spray. In September 1950, San Francisco residents walked through the city's famous fog without realizing that a military experiment was moving through the air around them. The military wanted to discover whether an enemy ship offshore could release a biological warfare agent over a coastal city. Researchers tested the theory over San Francisco. For several days, a Navy vessel released clouds containing 2 kinds of bacteria near the coast. One was Serratia marcescens, selected because researchers believed it was harmless and easy to identify in samples. The population was never warned. Monitoring equipment at 43 locations tracked the cloud as it traveled across the Bay Area. The results showed that material released from a ship could spread for miles across a densely populated city. Soon afterward, 11 patients at a San Francisco hospital developed unusual Serratia infections. One of them, Edward Nevin, died after the bacteria infected his heart. Nevin's family later sued the government, but the courts did not establish that Operation Sea Spray caused his infection. That connection remains disputed. The experiment itself is not disputed. The military really did release bacteria over an unsuspecting population without medical monitoring. Sea spray was part of a larger series of secret open-air vulnerability tests across the country. The public only discovered the truth years later through investigations and government hearings. What sounded like an unbelievable biological warfare rumor was already documented inside the military record.
The NSA phone records program. For years, jokes about the government recording everyone's phone activity were dismissed as exaggerated paranoia. The government was not listening to every conversation, but it was collecting something on a scale most people never imagined. Following the September 11 attacks, the National Security Agency began gathering telephone metadata in bulk. This did not include call audio, but it recorded the numbers involved, when calls occurred, and how long they lasted. Collected across an entire population, those details can reveal enormous networks of personal connections. In 2006, the program was placed under secret court orders using Section 215 of the Patriot Act. The orders were repeatedly renewed while the public remained unaware.
That changed in June 2013 when documents disclosed by NSA contractor Edward Snowden revealed the program. Government reports confirmed that bulk collection potentially covered the daily calling records of virtually every American. Officials defended the program as a counterterrorism tool, but the Independent Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board concluded that it lacked an adequate legal foundation, raised serious privacy concerns, and had demonstrated only limited value. In 2015, the USA Freedom Act ended this form of bulk collection and replaced it with a more targeted system. So the extreme rumor was false. Agents were not listening to every call. The disturbing core was true. A secret government database recorded who called whom, when, and for how long.
Project Sunshine. During the early nuclear age, scientists became alarmed by radioactive fallout. Strontium-90 was especially concerning because the body treats it like calcium, allowing it to accumulate inside bones. To measure how much fallout was entering people around the world, researchers needed human tissue, especially the bones of children. In 1953, the United States Atomic Energy Commission created Project Sunshine to measure radioactive material inside human bodies. The scientific question was important. The way some samples were obtained was disturbing. Hospitals and medical workers collected tissue from deceased people, including infants and children. In some cases, families were never told that parts of their relatives' bodies were being taken for government research. Project Sunshine itself was kept secret. Decades later, a federal advisory committee found that officials and researchers had used deception while seeking the bones of deceased babies. Concern about public reaction helped keep the project hidden. Project Sunshine did not kill children or deliberately expose them to radiation. The tissue came from people who had already died, and the research improved understanding of nuclear fallout. But the absence of consent was real. Human remains were quietly collected, transferred through an international network, and studied under a government program the public was not permitted to know existed. The rumor about scientists secretly collecting children's bones sounded grotesque. The government's own investigation eventually confirmed it.
MK Ultra. Of every case on this list, MK Ultra sounds the most like science fiction. During the Cold War, American intelligence officials feared that hostile governments could control prisoners and manipulate behavior. In 1953, the CIA approved a secret program to investigate those possibilities. The program was called MK Ultra. It was not one experiment inside one laboratory. It was a network of sub-projects involving drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electroshock, interrogation techniques, and other attempts to influence behavior. A 1977 Senate hearing identified 149 sub-projects, 185 outside researchers and assistants, and 80 connected institutions, including universities, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and prisons. Some participants did not know the CIA was funding the work. The most notorious experiments involved LSD. Some people volunteered, while others were given drugs without their knowledge. The CIA operated safe houses in New York and San Francisco where agents secretly dosed people and observed their reactions. One experiment ended in death. In November 1953, Army scientist Frank Olson attended a meeting with CIA and military researchers. Without his knowledge, LSD was placed in his drink. After severe psychological distress, he was taken to New York for treatment. Days later, he fell from a hotel window and died. The exact circumstances of his fall remain disputed. What official records confirm is that the CIA drugged him without consent and continued related experiments afterward. Reconstructing the complete program became almost impossible. In January 1973, most MKUltra records were destroyed on verbal orders from senior CIA officials. Then, thousands of surviving financial documents were discovered in a separate location. Those records produced the 1977 hearing that exposed the program's enormous scale. MKUltra never created the flawless mind control shown in movies, but its disturbing core was real. The CIA experimented on unwitting people, secretly funded research through unsuspecting institutions, and destroyed most of the evidence. The truth did not need science fiction to be terrifying.
These cases do not prove that every conspiracy theory is true. They prove that evidence matters. Each story became credible because documents survived, witnesses testified, or official investigations confirmed what happened. The rumors were often exaggerated. The documented truth was disturbing enough. Which of these cases should we investigate in full next?